Exactly. You carve your name into a tree, that's just there forever. But yeah, you put it on the White Rock, that's temporary. Just like love in a lot of cases.
My hometown messed me up. She won big on a Timmy's Cup. I heard about it at the Rotary Club. That's so Canardian. Still don't stop.
This is Canardian, the podcast that's gossiping about Canadian hometowns. I'm Katie Lohr, author of Pod the North, the newsletter for Canadian podcasters, and I'm joined by John Cullen, comedian and host and co-creator of the acclaimed 2024 podcast hit Broomgate, a curling scandal, and it's the podcast that exposes the unbelievable, never-before-told scandal that rocked the sport of curling. Yes, curling. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
John, where is your hometown, and how would you describe the vibe of it in 5 words or less?
Okay. I have several hometowns. This is complicated. I moved when I was 13 to British Columbia, Canada. And so I sort of consider my hometown where I spent my formative years. And that hometown is White Rock, British Columbia. Can I make a confession right away?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I didn't technically live in White Rock, which I know that you have already done Surrey, BC as part of an episode, but a lot
John,
of
it was great having you.
Yes, I know. Thank you. So I grew up in South Surrey. I lived 3 blocks from the White Rock border. So I spent most of my time in and around White Rock. It is definitely kind of its own thing, like South Surrey, White Rock. But I know people will be listening to this if they are familiar with White Rock, and they'll be like, is this guy even from White Rock? No, I am not. But when I first moved out of my parents' house, I did move into a house with a White Rock address. So suck it if you're one of those people who's mad at me. And yes, so people actually, I don't even have to come up with my own 5-word description for this, because people always described White Rock when I was growing up as newlyweds and nearly deads.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, that was who lived in White Rock. Now, of course, given what we know about Vancouver's real estate situation, no newlywed can afford to live in White Rock. So I would say it's rich heads and newly deads.
Oh, yeah. John, that was perfect. And
Thank
honestly, very affirming, because it just brings all the stuff that I've prepared into realness. I feel like my script isn't like totally bad now. So this is great.
I'm sure it was going to be great no matter what. But yes, it's a very rich, it's right on the water. So it's a very, well, and I should be clear, that's not me, but that is kind of the perception of White Rock. It is very expensive to live there. And so it's a lot of older people who have either lived there for a long time or amassed wealth along the way and moved there.
So here is my tourism board pitch version of White Rock. White Rock, British Columbia. The town motto is City by the Sea. Population is somewhere around 22,000 people, and it's the hometown of Canadian skateboarding icon Andy Anderson and New Girl actress and former Much Music VJ Hannah Simone. Some annual events in White Rock include the Tour de White Rock, which is a bicycle road race that attracts around 150 people. People just zip around White Rock. And then they also host an annual The Spirit of the Sea Festival, which is always on the first weekend of August on White Rock Beach. The festival started in 1949 and usually includes like a parade, fireworks, music, and a sandcastle competition, and also just like a variety of beach-related activities. And not only is it well known for the beach, but it also has a massive landmark, which is the pier, which stretches 1,542 feet into the ocean. So it's a pretty significant pier. So significant that the city of White Rock has set up like a live camera that just like always is looking at the pier, and you can see stuff going on, what the weather is like, if there's any alien sightings, things like that. Located on the unceded traditional territory of the Semiahmoo First Nation and the Coast Salish people. Today it's a city that's part of the Metro Vancouver area, and it sits on the coast of the Semiahmoo Bay, and it's surrounded on all 3 sides by Surrey. So yes, this is like very Surrey oriented, but on the sea, but it's not Surrey. it's White Rock.
It is not Surrey, yes. And a fun fact about that dividing line is that it actually runs in the middle of a street.
Okay.
So it's 16th Avenue in Surrey, and it's called North Bluff Road in White Rock. So that's how you know you're in White Rock, because Surrey is a grid system. So all of the street names and addresses are all just numbers in a grid.
Okay,
and
love
then
that.
all of the White Rock street names are your usual, like Main Street, Johnston Street, State Avenue, whatever. And so literally the dividing line between White Rock and Surrey is the dividing line of that road, like the center line on the road, which is very weird that it wouldn't be somewhere else. But yeah, so if you live on the north side of that road, your address is 16th Avenue. But if you live on the south side of that road, your address is North Bluff Road and you live in White Rock.
This must be a BC mainland thing, because I covered North Delta / Surrey last season, and there is like a main road that divides the two.
Yes,
like cities
Scott Road,
there too.
Scott Road and 70, and and then I can't remember what the other side of it is, but yes, I know the exact one you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, White Rock is named after a white rock. Actually, it's a 486-ton granite boulder that sits on the beach, and it actually migrated there during the last glaciation. And finally, because it's the center of the universe, White Rock is about a 40-hour drive from Toronto, but you have to do it all through the United States.
Yeah, I mean, you could go around the lakes in Ontario, but that would be foolish.
Longer than 40 hours,
because
sure.
White Rock is it's basically the southwest corner of Canada. Obviously, you have Vancouver Island, and that stretches south below the Canadian border. So, or the Canadian land border. So it's technically not the most southwestern part of Canada, but as far as the mainland of Canada goes, it is. So it's a border town. You're in White Rock. You, depending on where you live, you're anywhere from 5 to 12 minutes from the U.S. border.
This is something that I actually didn't realize.
Yeah, it's very, very close. So when you're on White Rock Beach, when you are looking across the bay there, that's America.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So did you have any crazy America excursions as a teen living there?
Well, I mean, I went to America a lot for gas and groceries because it's very cheap, and I've always had a Nexus card. They actually had a program before that called PACE, and then that got stopped after 9/11, and then they were like, let's bring it back. So Nexus, people are probably familiar with it, but it allows you to cross the border with some expediency. There's a separate lane for it at the land border and at the airport as well. You get through the security checkpoints faster. So we would just drive over there. The gas was like almost half price depending on how it was going, and then groceries were cheaper there too. And then you're pretty close to Seattle, so I would travel down to Seattle a lot for concerts and stuff like that. And then of course the other thing that happens when you live in a border town is a lot of American teenagers come up to Canada because they can drink. And so there was a famous bar in White Rock called the Ocean Beach Hotel, which was, I think, also theoretically a hotel, but I could not imagine actually staying there. But they were like legendary for their Wednesday nights. They had like cheap drinks. And so Blaine is the town that's like right over the border. But then there's a few other ones, Ferndale, Bellingham, that are all like within 20 miles of the Canadian border. And they would come up. It was always like, you would know who was from Blaine. I don't know how you could tell, but you could just tell. Like when you would go to the OB on Wednesday nights and be like, oh, that table's, they're from Blaine. Like, because they're just... they can't believe they can drink legally and they're just popping off. So
they clearly can't handle it.
They can't handle Canadian beer. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's the other way around. Like in the US, they free pour shots. So I feel like you get more drunk in America than Canada. But yeah, you could always tell when it was like some like Blaine girl's birthday or whatever, like her 19th birthday, and her and all of her of age friends would be coming up, and you'd be like, oh God,
we're going to Canada.
We're going to White Rock. We're going to the OB, baby. I mean, Blaine is also a shit town too, so it's like a small shit town. So like the idea of going to White Rock, which is also, it's not a shit town but small, actually does seem like maybe it would be cool, I guess, if you lived in Blaine.
Yeah, I mean, if I want to compare it to my experience being an underage drinker and finally being of age, like when I graduated high school, it was going to Montreal because that's where the drinking age was 18.
18, yeah.
But you're also going to Montreal. Like there is so much to do there.
Of
like
course.
so much. It was such an exciting trip. I imagine White Rock, not quite the same.
No,
thing.
there's 2 bars. There's the OB. So White Rock Beach is pretty long, actually. Like the stretch along the water. There's like you can drive along it. And then there's tons of like restaurants, ice cream shops, tourist traps, all that stuff. And so it's divided kind of by this hill that's in the middle of it. So you have East Beach and West Beach. So the OB was the prominent bar on West Beach. And then on East Beach, it was a bar called the Sandpiper, which is no longer there. RIP. The OB is still, I think the OB is still there under its original name. It changed its name at one point, and then they were like, oh, people have known the OB forever. Why did we ever change the name? That was stupid. And they changed it back. But the Sandpiper was sort of known as more of a like, the White Rock locals would go there. Like the OB, like White Rock teenagers would go there, but you would never get like adults going there. It was it was almost like a nightclub on a university campus. It kind of felt like if you went there on a Wednesday night, and they would do Wing Wednesday too. So we would go, you'd go and you'd like plow like 40 chicken wings, and then you'd just stay there until it turned into club night. And then that was just like a Wednesday night when I was growing up. I didn't drink, so for me it wasn't that exciting, but for the people who did. And then the Sandpiper would actually have
eat wings.
Oh, absolutely. Don't get it twisted. I get wing drunk any day.
Nothing like White Rock Wednesdays.
That's right. Yeah. So the Sandpiper was the funny, like if you went into the Sandpiper on any given night, you might have like a 19-year-old guy from Blaine dancing with like a 55-year-old woman from White Rock. And you weren't sure if like maybe that was going to lead to a hookup or not.
There's a chance.
There's a chance. It wasn't a non-zero chance. That's for sure.
I love this. Okay, before I get more into the vibe of White Rock, just a couple more things on the actual White Rock boulder on the beach, because it's kind of funny, the story around it. So for a long time, the boulder was kept white because of seabirds just pooping on it. And that was so white that it was actually used as a beacon by sailors in the 19th century. But now it's kept white just through monthly applications of paint by the city. And that means it's pretty much always a graffiti target. So the city's just always painting this rock white. I don't know how thick of paint it has now on it.
It's got to be so thick. And we used to climb up it. And then also the graffiti part was like, I wouldn't say target for like spray paint graffiti, really. You wouldn't really see that usually, but you would see like Sharpie because it's so white. Like it's literally painted white. Like imagine like a white wall in an elementary school. You know, tempting. Like if you put Sharpie on that, it's going to stand out. So we used to know when they were painting it. So you would go as soon as they painted it. Because again, and to say it's monthly, I want to say it's more than that. I want to say they paint it more often than that. But we would try to figure out when they were painting it so you could be like the first to go down and like write on the rock or whatever.
Just like every month, it's like signing your friend's cast, being the first person to do so.
Exactly. You're like, I got to put my girlfriend's name on there again.
Yeah.
We're still together this month. So.
But you might not be next month, and that's okay because it's going to get painted over again.
Exactly. You carve your name into a tree. That's just there forever. But yeah, you put it on the White Rock. That's temporary, just like love in a lot of cases.
Okay, so as you mentioned, the South Surrey border and everything. So every time I was looking up White Rock stuff, Surrey just kept coming up. The big distinguishing factor for me between the two is White Rock is very beach oriented.
For sure.
Very, very beachy. When you Google photos of White Rock, to me, and this might be a bit bold to say, but to me, White Rock is to Vancouver what Orange County is to Los Angeles.
Very much.
So all these beautiful homes built up on like the hillside, looking out into the water, big beach town vibes with shops and restaurants along the waterfront, like you mentioned. And yet it's like kind of got a small town feel with like wealthy
100%.
Families.
It's like a low rent Santa Monica. Like it's very much like you get tourists, like a lot of tourists I think it's like one of those things. If you're from Europe or Asia, you look up what do you do in Vancouver. People say take a day trip to White Rock. Like you would get a lot of that. I can remember I used to be really big into skimboarding. That's like a big thing in White Rock because the waves are not big enough to surf, but you can definitely skim. And also the tides go out super.
That's so funny.
Do you know what skimboarding
surf,
is?
But you can skim.
You can skim. Definitely.
It's like the tiny little. Oh no, I'm thinking of boogie boards, I think.
Well, so it's a similar shape to a boogie board, but so you can either do it you can do it where the tide is sort of like meeting the shore, like when the tide's out.
Yep.
So you can so what you do is you throw the board and then it glides along the shallow water and then you run after it and jump on it. And then
I've seen this.
Yeah, and then but you can also do it in tide pools. So like in White Rock, the tide goes out really far. So you get these really great tide pools. And back in my day, there were actually like skimboarding crews and they would bring like ramps and rails and everything and put them in the, and I remember one year, so it was like every year the tide pools, like the location of them would kind of change. So you would always have like one pool that kind of became the skimboarding pool every summer where it was just like, usually you'd want something big where the water was like consistently pretty shallow. And one year that was right beside the pier. Mm-hmm. And that was really the first year. I was probably 17 when this happened. And that was when I really realized how touristy White Rock was because the number of people that would stop on the pier and take pictures of us, take videos of us, looking like, what is this? You know, because a White Rock person wouldn't think twice about it. Like kids just skimboarded. It wasn't a big deal. Like I used to work the closing shift at Safeway. So that was 2:30 to 11. So I would wake up at like 10 or 11, skimboard, go right down to have breakfast, go right down to the beach, skimboard for 2 hours and then go to work. That was just like a normal deal.
That sounds like a perfect teenage summer.
I know. But again, it sounds Californian, but like White Rock is very much not California. So it's funny to think about it in that context. But for sure, like I do think that's the parallel, especially with having the pier there and everything. It's not Santa Monica, but someone would like to tell you that it is for sure.
Is there a restaurant on the pier like in the OC?
There is no restaurant on the pier. There's nothing on the pier. It's not like Santa Monica where it's got the theme park, the restaurants, everything on the pier. It's not that stable. It's just it's just a walkout. People will fish or like crab trap off of the end of the pier, and we used to jump off of it into the ocean.
Nice.
But the ocean's also very cold.
Yeah.
So it was fine, but yeah, it's not. The pier is literally you just walk out to the end of it and you go, oh, it's pretty nice out here, and then you walk back. That's it.
But it's world renowned, John. It's huge.
No, it is. I mean, it kind of is. Yeah. They got really mad. A storm broke it like 5 or 6 years ago. And then they spent all this tax dollars to repair it. And people were like, it's just not that important. We don't have to repair it. And other people were like, what are you talking about?
The pier is a staple.
We don't need to improve the hospital. We need to fix the pier right now. Yeah, they got really heated.
Okay, so on the note of White Rock being the OC of Vancouver, would you say as a teen you were the Seth Cohen, the Ryan
100%.
Atwood, the Oliver Trask?
I looked like him. I looked exactly like him.
Seth Cohen?
Yes, the OC was very good for me.
Nice.
I had the big floppy hair, and a lot of people said I looked kind of exactly like him. And I was like a huge nerd in high school, and I think that show. Kind of getting popular, I think was very good for like my life with girls. I'll see if I can find a picture for you, and then you'll know what I'm talking about because I had the big hair and everything. So it was pretty wild.
Oh, wait, that's actually crazy.
I know.
You look exactly like him.
I know, like he's, a good looking guy. Like I think when I say that, people are like, okay, yeah, right, dude. But yeah, I remember there used to be a day on Facebook. Do you remember where you would post like a celebrity you looked like? It was a thing for a minute. Maybe you're too young, but it was like you.
Oh no, this was my era.
Yeah, there was like a day where it would be like you change your profile pic to a celebrity that people thought you looked like. And there was a picture of Adam Brody wearing a shirt that I also had, or it was like very, very similar. And there were so many comments on it being like, I had to click and see that this wasn't you, like that this was not you, and that it was actually a picture of him because you look exactly like him. But yeah, I was more of I liked heavy music, so I actually wasn't like a death cab. I would have been like if Seth Cohen was like had a little bit of a dangerous screamo side. I was going to Warped Tour. I was doing some dangerous shit. I wasn't death cabin and switch footing. I was at the Alexis on Fire show in the pit.
Sick. And that's where the Canadian part comes in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So let's talk about, what did you call it? Newly deads and rich heads?
Yeah, rich heads and nearly deads. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about that, because for a while, White Rock was the affordable place to live.
Correct.
If you couldn't afford to live in metropolitan Vancouver. But by the 1970s, the White Rock, South Surrey area really developed into like the suburban bedroom community of the Lower Mainland. And you could get a cliffside home for a pretty decent price. You could enjoy some pretty peaceful place to live in, really nice weather, low rainfall, like mild generally, super walkable city. And it used to be quite a friendly place, apparently, where people would just like say hi to each other on the streets. Apparently it's not so much like that anymore. So like, given that White Rock, when you were growing up, seemed to like cater mainly to the aging population, like what the heck were you getting up to?
Just mischief, mostly. It's like what does anybody do what does anybody do in a small town? You know, it's just like, because that's the thing. I think people, because Surrey is huge, right? Like it's one of the largest municipalities in Canada, and then it's also White Rock's only about 40 minutes south of Vancouver. So, you know, obviously Vancouver's quite big as well. So I think people would think of, you know, like when we think of suburbs of Toronto, we're thinking of like huge cities like Markham and Scarborough and Mississauga and stuff. And it's similar with Vancouver. You think of Burnaby and Coquitlam, North Van, like these are pretty big places. Like White Rock was ultimately quite small. And so it did feel in a lot of ways like growing up in a small town. And so, yeah, it's like, what does anybody do in a small town? We drove our cars around a lot. I think with having the beach there, it was like, it just made the town feel a little more alive. Like you would call it doing laps, and you would literally like drive your car up and down the beach. Like so you'd go up one way, then you'd kind of like loop around, then you'd come back and drive it the other way. And then there's like another beach too called Crescent Beach. So sometimes you would do like drive.
We're going to talk about Crescent Beach.
Yeah. So so you drive like past White Rock Beach, then you go all the way up. Crescent Beach is about 15-20 minutes away. So then you drive all the way to Crescent Beach. You do a lap around. Crescent Beach isn't as drivable. It doesn't have like a drivable waterfront. It's more of like a walkable waterfront. So you drive to Crescent Beach, then you'd loop back and do the other way down White Rock Beach. And yeah, we used to do shit like when we were driving, because there's all these like patios and stuff, obviously, for the restaurants on the beach. And we used to just like drive by and play like really loud, stupid music. We would drive backwards down the strip. We did that a few times. I can specifically remember driving backwards down the strip, pumping the Backstreet Boys with me and like two other buddies. And that was just like a joke to us. It was like, this is really funny. We're just driving backwards down the strip, because the strip's usually very busy, and we just like kind of waited to a point where it wasn't that busy. And so, yeah, it was just a lot of that. It was like a lot of driving around. And then you always had rich friends. Like being in White Rock, you always had rich friends. Like I didn't grow up in that environment. Like my family was comfortable, but we were definitely not rich. But you always had rich friends. So the house parties in White Rock were also like pretty legendary, because you'd have like legitimate mansions that you were partying in sometimes. So that was kind of, I would say, the overall vibe was like a lot of screwing around, and then like kind of again like sort of California seeming like mansion house parties that like probably a lot of Canadian high schoolers did not do, you know.
Yeah, it's funny because your story on the West Coast doing laps is very different from the driving that teens did on the East Coast, which I learned in one of the episodes I've done for this season. It's the St. Stephen episode in New Brunswick where they did something called ridge runs, which was just basically sending cars off of like huge hills in the rural back roads as teenagers. And just
we didn't have that. We didn't
clinging on for dear life. So that's what they're doing over on the East Coast.
Yeah, we didn't have that. The cars were too nice. That's the problem. Like all these rich kids had nice cars, like that was the thing. It was like, kids would get their license and their parents would buy them, immediately buy them like a $20,000 or $30,000 car in like 2000 or whatever. So, you're talking about a $40,000 or $50,000 car now. That was very normal. That was very normal back then. So yeah, we didn't have, I think again, if it was a more traditional small Canadian town, you'd have these beater cars that you wouldn't care about. And again, not me, but I should be very clear. And it's not you. And all my friends were not rich either. It was just like select people where you'd be like, oh, okay, cool. You got like an Infinity for your 16th birthday. Sick, like an Infinity G30 or whatever. And you're like, okay, well, that's a good thing to give a teenager.
All right. Sure.
Yeah.
It's the same thing they did in the O.C. I'm pretty sure Marissa Cooper was going around driving a G-Wagon. I can't confirm, but I'm pretty sure I remember. I rewatched the first season like last year and didn't realize like the whole season is like 30 episodes. It goes through like 800 arcs. It's insane. Highly recommend the rewatch.
Okay, I'm on it.
So I went into the Internet Archives to see what people are talking about when it comes to the vibes here. Mainly, they echo what you've said. It's expensive. It's full of tourists in the spring and summer, especially along the beach areas. It's also very much a geriatric age city. You take your life in your hands when you're driving among them. Somebody else said, it's so damn expensive. I saw a house for sale for $2 million. Wish I had the chance to buy something 20 years ago. So over the 20 years,
what happened to my parents? My parents have easily made over $1 million on their house.
Nice.
They bought it in '99. So.
And that's how you do it.
That's the
Go
story.
Back in
I mean,
time.
I know that's a boomer story, and that's definitely not exclusive to my parents or White Rock. But yes, definitely they got in the market at exactly the right time. And it was funny when we moved from Ontario, it was expensive, like what they spent on their house originally, it was like, oh my God, like we're really stretching to afford this place. Turned out to be pretty good for them. Yeah.
So people are saying that as like the elderly community dies off in White Rock, their old like nice kind of cliffside houses are all just getting razed and they're putting in like new developments and that kind of thing. But White Rock's community of senior citizens still seems like pretty strong. And they've been advocating pretty hard to see some respect put on the name of one of their favorite pastimes. John, what do you think that pastime is?
Oh, God. I don't know. I think I know. I feel like I think I know what you're going to say. But I'll let you say it.
It's being naked.
Yeah. That was like never something that we came across. Like when we were kids. Yeah. So like I know what you're talking about. Like it's a Crescent Beach thing. Mm-hmm. And again, Crescent Beach is very isolated. And the area that you would walk on the beach there, like compared to like where the nudist place I think is or was, or I don't even know what's going on there. But it wasn't something that we really like knew about or sought out, I wouldn't say at the time.
Interesting.
But we were aware of it, I think.
Okay, it's interesting you say that because this is like basically an issue going on in White Rock right now. So Crescent Rock Beach is a spot just northeast of White Rock. As you mentioned, it's a 15 to 20 minute drive away. And it's sort of like on the coast between White Rock and Crescent Beach, or White Rock, Crescent Beach. And like there's Crescent Rock Beach sort of like in the middle. And that sort of like middle area along the coast is a hot spot for nudists.
To where you're talking about, like you'd have to really want to go there. And I think when you are a teenager, the promise of a nude beach is not like, you just know what the population of White Rock is. So I don't think like I went to UBC, which has Wreck Beach, which is also a very famous nude beach. But I think like when you went to UBC, it was like, well, if I go down to Wreck Beach, like I might see some good looking people naked. And I know that that's not what nude beaches are about. I'm just saying as a teenager that was horny, that's like what you thought was like, you know, maybe we'll go down there and there'll be some young like students, like other students like me, that will be nude and that will be fine to look at or nice to look at, you know? And I think in White Rock, we probably thought like, okay, who's going to the White Rock nudist beach? It's not going to be anyone we would want to see naked. And I don't have a desire to be naked out there. So whatever they're doing, they just, hey, have some fun out there.
So yes, apparently the population of Crescent Rock Beach nudists is like majority elderly people.
For sure.
But I did see some photos online of some pretty young butts out there enjoying themselves.
So I screwed up.
But the nudists love Crescent Rock Beach. They love it. And it's even described on the Crescent Beach website. And here's how they described it. Be buffed by the bluffs at Crescent Rock Beach, the original naturist refuge on the secluded coast between White Rock and Crescent Beach. Take in the panoramic views of Boundary Bay and the Gulf Islands while basking in the sun's warming rays for an all-over tan. So, are you convinced, John? I think it sounds pretty good to me.
Like, I know the area that it's in, and it is nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a nice beach, for sure.
So-
I don't have a desire to be naked outside, but some people do, and that's great for them.
Yeah.
No judge.
Yeah.
I just, it doesn't sound great to me because I'm not seeking an all-over tan. No one has ever seen me and thought, he should get an all-over tan. That would help him. You should do that.
So Crescent Rock Beach has a 5-star rating on TripAdvisor.
Okay.
It has over 600 reviews.
Whoa.
People love this place. It's a highlight on a website called nudebeachmap.com.
Sure.
And here's how one reviewer described it. They said, Crescent Rock Beach is super chill and easygoing. The beach does have an active train track that runs parallel to the beach, which do have multiple trains a day that pass through, which is always fun to stand up and wave as they roll by, especially the daily passenger train, as it must be a real surprise to passengers seeing a bunch of people relaxing and enjoying the sun in the nude. Parking can be difficult, though.
That's true, too.
Yeah.
It's just such a funny thing that's the highlight of it for you. I like going there because I can wave at people naked on the train. I can show them something they don't want to see. And that's what I like about it.
It's hilarious.
It
So
is hilarious.
on that note, John, so Crescent Rock Beach has been in this sort of like cyclical issue sort of since the beginning of it being a thing 20 years ago. What do you think this issue is?
Well, it's got to be that like other old people want them to just put their damn pants on.
It's a good guess. The issue is brand awareness. So
Okay.
here's a subreddit that I found. It's called Nudists by Crescent Beach. And it goes like this. I went to Christopherson Steps today by Crescent Beach and walked a little further towards the White Rock side. Was it always an area for nudists to hang out? I saw a little boy and his dad playing not too far, and it seemed odd to me. I just want to confirm whether it is or isn't an area for nudists. And so there's another subreddit called Is Crescent Beach a Nude Beach Now? And somebody else with the same inquiry. I don't mind people sunbathing in the nude, but a heads up would be nice. I took my teen cousin to Crescent Beach yesterday to show him around, only to find old nude people at the southern side of the beach. So there is an issue going around here where people don't know, and this includes yourself, don't know that this is like a nudist beach.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like super public knowledge. Even for us, I think back in the day, it was like something we heard about but wasn't even sure was real, or we definitely didn't know where it was if you wanted to find it. Like when you go to Wreck Beach, like you got to walk down similar to the steps, which we're going to get into some other steps in my story. But the steps, like there's kind of only one way to Wreck Beach. I mean, you can definitely walk from Jericho Beach to Wreck Beach and you can kind of go around the point there. And I guess in that sense, you could stumble upon nude people, but that's like a difficult walk and it's a long walk. Like really the only way down is to take the stairs down to Wreck Beach. And there's tons of signage at the top of it that's like, people will be naked here. You will see things you don't want to see that you can't unsee in many ways. And there's a lot of warning about it where, I think you're right. Like you saying Crescent Rock Beach, like that's not a term that's familiar to me. Like
what is this?
Like we wouldn't, if you said, I'll meet you at Crescent Rock Beach, we wouldn't know what that is. Like, I don't know what that is. So even that alone, and I grew up there, is confusing.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple other stories of people who like accidentally found the beach. Somebody said the only reason why I knew that this beach existed is because I flew my drone there thinking I was hundreds of meters away from people, only to find out I was very seriously mistaken.
And they were probably like thinking the drone was sinister.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, oh, this guy wants to see my junk.
Somebody said, yes, it's been an unofficial nude beach for years, for about 20 years. My husband and I discovered that on an unusually warm day last fall. We should have suspected something because we kayak out to the beach from the East Beach and have seen a nude guy walking around a couple of times. But when we went walking along the beach, we were made fully aware that there are numerous people nude there. So don't turn left if you don't want a full eye. So
it is also weird. And again, I don't care about nude beaches. I've been to Wreck Beach many times. It's not an issue for me. But it is weird to just be like, this is a nude beach now, which is kind of what it seems like did happen in this instance, where it was like 10 people in White Rock who all figured out that they want to be naked outside. We're just like, well, this is a spot where you do have, like, I know where you are describing. Like, I know, generally speaking, like, how to get there. And it is isolated. Like, you would either have to walk, like, a long way from White Rock Beach or a decent ways from those steps that you're talking about. Like, I know where it is. So I do understand, like, it's not likely that someone would stumble upon that area, but it is definitely possible, as we have learned. And again, it is just a weird, I think, a strange thing to be like, this is a nude beach now, by the way.
It feels very squatters' rights.
Yes,
like
very much so.
We've been here for 20 years, so just let us have it.
I have had my dick out right here for 20 years. And now you're telling me I have to put my dick away?
One last comment. Never seen any baddies there. There you go.
It's true. I mean, I believe that. That I very much believe.
So people are out for coastal walks, leisurely kayaks, and they keep stumbling into naked people. What do you think is the solution here?
Fence it up.
Fence it up. Okay.
I'm just guessing that that's what White Rock people would say. I'm not saying that, but to me, that very much seems like there has been a White Rock council meeting where they were like, if we put an opaque fence around this area of the beach and then people can just do whatever they want inside the fence, that definitely seems like something that would have come up in a city hall.
Seems like a reasonable solution, though people could swim around it, but at least the fence would be a barrier with like a big, like,
just if you were walking on the beach, just kind of like trying to do, because you can walk, and we did it a few times, you can walk from White Rock Beach to Crescent Beach, which is where you would pass by this nude beach. We often did it at night or like at dusk, so it wouldn't have been nude time. But it's a long walk, but it's definitely one that people do. And like you said, with the train tracks there, like a lot of people walk the train tracks from the beach, from one beach to the other. So so then that way, if people are doing that, you put the fence up, safe.
It's a great idea. One thing that it's lacking that Wreck Beach does have plenty of is signage.
Yes.
So most people would be like, just put signs up there, just let people know that there's naked people. But for over 20 years, it seems like it's been easier said than done. The awareness around the area has kind of always ebbed and flowed. And that's because there's only ever been unofficial signage that's been continuously removed or vandalized over the years. So these signs have been rendered pretty much useless. But the recent instance of it all coming to a head head was in 2021 when the police were called and responded to a complaint of public nudity. So a lot of the time, the police would just like sort of be on a routine patrol, come to the beach, like chat with people and then leave, just make sure everybody's being safe. In 2011, police actually signed an informal complaint resolution saying that there was like a lack of understanding around the fact that this beach was existent, that people were nude sunbathing there, and that this was like a go-to spot. But this time in 2021, when people called the police showed up and they arrived, they asked people to cover up or else they would be fined. So something's going on there where the police are not being properly educated that this is a safe space for nude people.
Right.
And this is when the president of Surrey's United Naturists decided to draft an open letter to the heads of the police. So it was the Surrey RCMP, the White Rock RCMP, and the Surrey Police Service, asking all these officers to stop responding to complaints of public nudity and that the police should educate themselves about the lack of awareness where Crescent Rock Beach is located and that it's okay to be naked there. So he called for signage to be installed on site that officially acknowledges its existence. The problem is it's not exactly clear whose jurisdiction this is. So Surrey went on to say that like that stretch of the shoreline does not belong to us, so we are not taking care of it. I haven't heard anything about whether White Rock cares that it's part of their land. So the nude beach remains in limbo.
I was literally going to say before, like, because I thought there was a spot where you were finishing like a minute ago, and I was going to say, I bet the
so
issue.
Sorry.
No. I don't mean it in a bad way, because I was going to say my first thought when you were done talking was going to be, I bet the problem is they think there should be signs, but no one wants to pay for the signs. That was literally, because White Rock is also, it's all old people. They're all cheap as shit. So to me, that felt like it would be like, you know, someone going to town hall and yelling and saying, you need to put signs up on the nude beach. My grandson saw a titty and now he's ruined for life, you know, or whatever. And then they say, okay, yeah, we would love to put signs up, but that'll be $5,000 of taxpayer money. No, you cannot do that. Well, you cannot charge us. Yeah, you can't charge us for the signs. Like that to me feels like a very White Rock. That feels like a very White Rock dilemma. Not even, you know, also accepting the fact that it's, you know, White Rock and Surrey fighting over who actually would own it and then therefore have to pay for it.
Yeah. No one wants to own the nudists. No one wants to own the signage, but nobody wants them there either. It's really quite sad. So yeah, the only permanent signage there right now is just a giant rock that has the words nude beach spray painted on it and like with an arrow vaguely pointing south. And that's how people know that there's a nude beach. So now is the time that I look to one of my favorite podcasts this year, a show called We're Here to Help. Because I want to get your perspective. Signs are basically useless. Police aren't taking the area seriously. What would you suggest to the Crescent Rock nudists to help them bring some brand awareness and respect on their name?
Well, Vancouver used to do like a nude bike ride. I don't know if they still do it or not. But
I've seen that in Toronto.
Yeah, that used to be like a big deal, was the nude bike ride. So maybe do like maybe make it part of the Tour de White Rock, which is also an extremely funny name for a bike race, by the way. Tour de White Rock. Okay. At least go the extra mile and call it like Tour de Roche Blanche or something like that. Roche Blanc. But like very confusing name. But maybe plan it around like the Tour de White Rock. Do like a little nude bike ride or like a nude walk or something. Like, you know, I mean, people won't like that either, but it might raise awareness of like, yeah, no, because again, like I said, when I lived there, I don't think I ever knew it 100% existed for real. I always thought it was just like a couple people who like five or less. No,
there's a president of a club. That's how many people.
For sure. And that makes sense. I think in my mind, I think that's kind of what we always thought it was it was like, it's like 5 people and they just want to be naked, like whatever. So yeah. So I think you show the size of your club that you want to have this space. and go from there.
I think that is a wonderful suggestion.
Thank you.
It already incorporates things that are going on. It adds brand awareness. You see the size, like you mentioned, and then they can have a big flag that's like, this is where we hang out, FYI. Scan this QR code if you want to be pointed directly to the map on Google Maps or something.
There you go.
Boom. There
Done
you
deal.
go.
We solved all their problems.
John, you have brought me a story about your hometown. I don't know if it's real, if it's something you heard through the grapevine, if it's something that you made up. I'm going to guess at the end. So please go ahead, spill your hometown tea.
So you talked about the Christopherson steps earlier. And so there's actually another set of steps in White Rock near to Crescent Beach that we called 1,001 steps.
Okay. And these are steps that go down to the beach,
Steps that go down to the beach, yes. So in this particular case, you drive to the end of a cul-de-sac and then you could park in the cul-de-sac. It didn't have a parking lot at the top, but you could park like on the road or in the cul-de-sac, whatever. And then it was like these steps that led down to sort of a secluded area of the beach. It was definitely walking distance to Crescent Beach. Like it wasn't in the middle or whatever. It was closer to Crescent Beach than White Rock Beach. It was called 1,001 steps. It did not have anywhere close to that number of steps.
Like 5?
No. It was pretty. It was like 100 maybe, okay. But it was like, it was really stupid. But it was kind of. Have you been to Wreck Beach before?
No, I've never been. I've only been to Victoria in BC.
Oh, okay. So similar to that, it was like, obviously you have a steep cliff face. And so you need stairs to go down the cliff, essentially. And similar to Wreck Beach, it's kind of like it's very forested. There was like there was like a path to get to the steps. You kind of had to walk through the forest a little bit. Then you would go down these steps and whatever. So when we were kids, well, teens, whatever, we used to go there and like party's the wrong word, but like drink and just like hang out, whatever. Like it was because it's a landmark. It's easy to get to. You could walk down to the beach if you wanted. You could hang out in the forest if you wanted. No big deal, right? And so we would go there, hang out, whatever. And then weirdly, so this is like kind of after I'm a teenager, obviously, I think one thing that got sort of popular in that era of like the late aughts, early 10s was ghost hunting. And so there was this thing where I guess I don't know the exact story because it does run right by the railway tracks there. So I can't remember if it was like someone got hit by a train or I don't know what it was, but they thought that this area, this like 1,001 steps area was like haunted. And so these ghost hunters now would start to come to this area. And as you can imagine, a mix of like partying teenagers and like adults who believe in ghosts is like a bad
you
combination.
got those machines in the background. They're like,
yeah, exactly. Right. And all the ghost hunters are like losers. I'll say it. Like you're a loser if that's what you do. So like you got these weird adults who are like out and again, ghosts come out at night and so do partying teenagers. Mm-hmm. So it got to the point where like the teenagers would antagonize the ghost hunters and there would be these like things, whatever. So they ended up fencing it up. They put like a big gate and they started to close it at night because there were these like, there was like fights between ghost hunters and teens. I don't know if it ever got super physical, but just like they would bug each other and then, there would be yelling, whatever. And like the houses around complained and whatever. And so like that was a beloved spot to me as a teenager, and I think every small town has that. You have your beloved outdoor hangout spots when you're a teenager. And now it's gone because ghost hunters came in and wrecked it for everybody.
And this is how you know fences work, right?
Exactly. Well, in this case, there's only one entrance and like you don't have to fence off the forest. Like they just they put like chain link on the like kind of on the street facing side with like these big iron gates.
Oh my God.
And they like close the iron gates at night. The police like come around or whatever, whoever does it. So like, yes, I mean, you could probably hop it, but it's like, I think it's, as far as I know, has kind of like curbed both issues teenagers partying there and people hunting for ghosts. So.
Wait, so then did you ever have any encounters with
No,
ghost
so this
hunters?
is in my time. Like that was
Okay.
after my
Right.
time. So like, because I was in high school from 99 to 03. So for me, it probably would have been like 01 to 05 ish, where because I would live in I lived in White Rock when I went to UBC, and then I also would come back for the summers, obviously.
Yeah.
So that was kind of so it was after that. So but it was one of those, you know, when you get older and something happens in your small town where you feel like they've wrecked it for like future teens, and
Yes.
then you're almost like mourning the death of like, oh, we used to that's where we used to drink, and now like a kid growing up in White Rock doesn't get to
They don't drink there
yeah,
anymore.
they just don't get to hang out there. Like they don't even get 1,001 steps. Like that was such a cool spot to hang. So yeah.
you, before I guess, you didn't have any ghost encounters of your own.
No, I mean, no.
So you're not a believer.
I'm not. I mean, I guess I'm not a believer, but I'm not out there actively seeking ghosts.
Well, you can't anymore, so why would you bother?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I think your story's true.
Okay, am I supposed to tell you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I made it all up. 100% lie. Yeah. 1,001 steps is real.
Because I did see 1,001 steps
Yes.
online.
And they did put a gate there, but I think the gate was because someone did either die or get hurt there. Because I was like, oh, is there a good story to tell? And then I was looking up and I saw they put a gate on 1,001 steps. So I was like, I'll just make up a story about why they put the gate there.
That's perfect. The fury you felt for your old stomping grounds just fueled an actual story out of your being.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say I should have been more suspicious because I did prepare an alien story for us to talk about, but we don't have enough time. And this is what I should have been suspicious about because White Rock is definitely much more of an alien place than they
Yeah,
are
we're
a
way
ghost
more
place.
aliens than ghosts.
Way
and
more
also,
aliens than ghosts.
Quick word on the alien stuff. What a joke. And I remember when that happened. Not stupid. There you go. Now we covered it.
So are you a believer in aliens then or no?
I mean, I don't think. I
It's
don't
a
have time.
topic for
I don't
another
have time.
podcast. Okay.
I don't have time. That's my thing. With like ghosts and aliens and whatever, I don't have time. If I see a ghost or if I get abducted by an alien, then I'll go, hey, fair play. Fair play to you.
Now I've got
aliens
time.
and ghosts. Yeah. You abducted me. I thought you probably weren't real and you abducted me. So you are real and fair play. Good for you. But
Nice.
right now, I don't have time. I'm too busy to think about that.
I love that. John, thank you so much for joining me on Canardian. How can people support you, find you, all those things?
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, you talked about the podcast off the top of the show, Broomgate. It's been a wild ride. It was the #1 podcast in the country for a little bit there, and it's we've been very lucky, and a lot of people have been very nice in putting it on year-end lists and stuff. And so, I used to be a competitive curler. We tell a story about a brand new broom on the curling equipment market that caused a brouhaha. And then I have another podcast that I think your listeners may like about Jeopardy. I do a weekly Jeopardy comedy podcast with Emily Heller, who's a TV writer, has written on Barry and Search Party, is currently writing on The Great North. We are huge Jeopardy fans, and there really wasn't like a funny and fun podcast about Jeopardy, so we made one. So if you're a Jeopardy fan, or even if you're not, we hear from people who never watched the show, or we got them back into watching the show. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. We are What is a Jeopardy Podcast is the name of it. And we're that on Instagram. And we're at Jeopardy Podcast on Blue Sky, but it's available wherever you get your pods. And then I also do stand-up comedy. You can follow me on every platform at Cullen the Comic.
I'm Katie Lohr. You can find me through all the links on the show in the show notes, and make sure you subscribe to my newsletter, Pod the North. The Canardian theme song is by my very talented partner, Mark Allen, with support from his own hometown buddies, People Like Us. And if you like the podcast or you know someone from White Rock, please share it with that friend or somewhere on social media, wherever the people will find it. Other than that, see you around town.